I call the meeting of the Environment and Natural Resources Finance and Policy Committee to order. A quorum is present. We'll go to the approval of the minutes. Representative Purcell, have you had a chance to review the minutes?
I have, and I move their approval, Mr. Chair.
Representative Purcell moves the minutes from April 1st, 2025. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries and the minutes are approved. Folks, we've got a lot of items on the agenda today, so as we have testifiers, we will be setting time limits going forward. We have our first bill up, which is Representative Tabke. I move that House File 2419 be laid over for possible inclusion in a future bill. Representative Tabke, I believe you have an A1's author's amendment. Could you please explain it?
Yes, sir. That's bill, as we've been working on it, has had some concerns brought up, and so this will put it in the motion that I would like.
Okay, very good. I move the A1 author's amendment to get the bill in the form the author wants. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion prevails and the A1 amendment is adopted. Representative Tabke, two-year bill as amended.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members. I appreciate everyone hearing this bill. This is a bill from a constituent that I have in Shakopee, and this has, he was on West Rush Lake this past summer and saw a child almost get hit by a boat. That was, kid had fallen off the tube, almost get hit by a boat, was in the early evening, was really hard to see at that point, and he's on spring break right now, so unable to come testify and tell you the story, so I'm gonna do my best to share it. But at the time, decided that it would be easier to see kids as they're in the water, especially if they have reflective material on their life jacket. And so this is what this does, and it's as easy of an entry as we could possibly come up with for getting into making sure that we have reflective materials on life jackets so kids are keep kids safe and making sure that this is moving forward. And so the bill has a warning for first time through 2028. And then from there, also what we just added in the amendment was not having to have people buy new life jackets, but put reflective tape as an option for putting on life jackets. And then by I don't have the amendment in front of me, 2030, I think it was the date that we ended up with for having to have life jackets with reflective material on them. And so this has been worked through and had a lot of opinions on there, and would appreciate everyone's support and inclusion in a future bill.
Very good. Thank you, Representative Tabke. I understand we have a testifier that's online, Mr. Jeff Pilgrim. If you'd like to identify yourself, please, and go ahead with your testimony.
Hi, my name is Jeff Pilgrim. I'm the sole proprietor of Pilgrim Paddles. I'm an ACA certified paddling safety instructor, and I'm also a longtime power boater. And I actually have a number of life jackets here. I have some concerns with this bill because it means that somebody in Minnesota is going to have to approve life jackets for use. Is that going to be the individual DNR guys? I know that I've lived in Minnesota since 1992, and the DNR guys don't seem to be really too interested in seeing anything other than that you have a light on. I'm sorry, I'm going to put my dog outside. I trained her during the COVID time so that anytime I talk, she barks, so she gets a treat.
Okay. Are you still there, sir?
Yep, just a second. Okay, so she's out on the deck now.
All right, thank you.
I talked to a representative from Mustang Survival. Mustang Survival acquired MTI. MTI started making both inherently buoyant life jackets and inflatable life jackets, and got absorbed by Mustang Survival. They make a lot of search and rescue gear that many government agencies use. And they currently don't make any state-specific life jackets. So I continue to wonder why the state of Minnesota would want to get in the business of approving life jackets, and how this law would treat other styles of life jackets, like belt life jackets and suspender style life jackets, which are legal for kids. And as a longtime user of life jackets, I know that the best and highest quality used life jackets are actually made in Europe, and they're not USCG Coast Guard approved. So I would suggest that the best thing that we could do would be to work with the Coast Guard to try to get them to update life jackets to include reflective material. I have some adult life jackets that have some reflective material on them already. Nowhere, I think the bill called for 31 square inches, and most life jackets don't have 31 square inches of material that could be changed into reflective. So I would recommend, actually, I find that the watercraft safety laws in Minnesota are really kind of behind the times, and I would recommend that we form a working group to update our watercraft safety and registration laws.
Well, thank you, sir. If we could wrap up here, because we also have a number of other bills we have to give to, if you'd like to give a closing on it. Thank you.
Yeah, so I would recommend that we table this bill and that a working group be formed to look at all of Minnesota's watercraft safety laws. And that the working group include members of the community with more experience than just a single voter.
Okay. Thank you so much for your testimony, sir. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on House File 2419? Not seeing any at this point in time, I will take questions from members. Members, questions. Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Have I heard it right that there's not going to be a environment and natural resources policy bill this year?
Thank you, Chair Schultz. As of right now, there's not a separate policy bill. A separate policy bill would have needed to be done by now. In terms of policy, the information that I'm receiving right now is that we're looking at putting together a budget bill, not a policy bill. And that's what we'll be looking at for next week as of right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious how this bill is going to move forward in the form that it is.
I would say, Representative Schultz, that what may happen is that this bill will continue to be worked on over the summer.
Okay, very good, Mr. Chair. I'm just, obviously there's some merits to this, and at the same time, I'm not quite sure that we need to go this route or that we have uniformity around where this is at this point.
Okay, thank you. Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And one of the questions I have is around the reflectiveness. If this is, if a life jacket, how much of it has to be above water, below water? I mean, that's, if you've got the reflective tape below water, that's an issue. But I think, I think there's a little bit of merit to this. But I think one of the other things when you as we look at colors that are seen, visible in water, I think that might be a easier way to go about things is, I think there's light conditions that reflectivity is not going to be there, but, certain colors will show up better in lake water than pool water and stuff like that. And I think some of these things, making sure that we have life jackets that are bright, of certain colors will show up. And, especially when you start getting towards the end of day, a little harder to see. So, I think, my concern would be if the reflectiveness is underwater, well, then it's not effective either. So, thank you.
Representative Tabke.
Mr. Chair and Representative Nelson, thank you. Yeah, that, so the language that we have in the bill is from the Coast Guard. So that's Coast Guard language that we're using on there for the 31s. And it also specifies that it needs to be on the upper portion of the life jacket. And like, you're totally right that the reflective tape, if it's underwater, is not going to do any good there. So we're assuming that people would use it where it would be appropriate. But we're also just trying to make it as easy to adopt this for the future. So everybody doesn't have to go out and buy all new life jackets and that kind of thing. So as kids age out of these life jackets, that they're able to be replaced using reflective materials. And so this is the way I understand would not need to have Coast Guard approval specifically for this, but it would be the materials would be switched out, and so the materials would be used as reflective materials. So you're totally right.
Okay. Representative Nelson.
Are there any life jackets that are currently made with reflective? I haven't, there's enough hand-me-down life jackets in our family that I'm not really sure if I've bought a youth life jacket in quite a long time. So I don't know if they're even making life jackets with reflectiveness on, except for maybe on a Coast Guard approved vehicle. I'm not sure.
Representative Tabke.
Mr. Chair and Representative Nelson, no, there are not much, there's not a huge amount that are made with reflective material. There are some that are being made with reflective materials for sure. And so that's why we put the long timeline on this, to make sure that it makes sense for small businesses to stock things and manufacturers to make them, and so that we have those. But if there's a different way to go about this, I am all for it, because it was, as I understand, it was close. And we're just trying to help keep kids safe.
Okay, very good. Next, we'll go on to Co-Vice Chair Burkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And really, I was going to ask Assistant Commissioner to come up, and maybe, I'm wondering if anyone else from the DNR might be in the room. I see he just stepped out, but I'm wondering if the DNR has any thoughts, concerns, questions, would like to share it all, but I don't know.
I think we might have somebody from the DNR approaching here.
There we go. There we go.
There we
Thank you.
go. Thank you. Please go ahead and introduce yourself and begin your time. Answer the question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colonel Rodman Smith, Director of Enforcement, Department of Natural Resources. Mr. Chair, Representative Burkle, we just started talking with Representative Tabke about this here a couple weeks ago. We did send him some concerns. That's one of the reasons they have the extension on the implementation date. But from the sounds of what Chair Fischer just said, it sounds like we have all summer to work on this, and so we'll be working with Representative Tabke over the summer on this. Safety and the safety of children is very important, but also it needs to be something that's workable. There's not any Coast Guard approved children's life jackets right now that have reflective material, so it's a little bit of a long road, but we're more than willing to work with Representative Tabke.
Okay. Next, Representative Jacob.
Thank you, Chair Fischer. In my district, there's a lot of rivers and canoeing and tubing that have no motorized boats on them. So will anyone on those rivers that are recreating, will it be illegal for them to use the life jackets that they've currently have after a certain date? Is that the intent?
Representative Tabke.
Mr. Chair and Representative Jacob, so yes, it would be on all waters of the state of Minnesota. So yes, you would be there, and the intent is for it to become a standard, right, for how we do things. So this, where this bill is inserted into statute right now is within a section of law, just make sure that I'm getting my names right and everything here, is within a section of law for the Grant Allen law. And so this, where the incident happened this summer, was also the lake where Grant Allen died. And so this, making sure that everyone is wearing a life jacket while they're on a boat, youth wearing a life jacket all the time, is the standard of what we have now. And so he drowned, and because he wasn't wearing a life jacket from being on a boat. And so that's why we have these laws in place right now. And so the hope and the goal of this is to have it be standard for reflective materials on life jackets, as very similar to how whenever a kid is in a boat, they're expected to have a life jacket on per law and per expectation. So that's the goal here. So yes.
So
Representative Jacob.
So a standard life jacket would then become illegal if it didn't meet your new requirements. And then how's it enforced? Are we going to have like lifeguard jacket police, or how will that, will we need special staff for that? Or what's the penalty if you're caught with the wrong kind of life jacket?
Representative Tabke.
Mr. Chair and Representative Jacob, it's the exact same thing as it is today. So there's no changes whatsoever in how this is enforced. It's just as it's enforced today, for if a kid is wearing or not wearing a life jacket, or you don't have enough life jackets in a boat for the number of people who are in there. It's that exact same mechanism. And to me, the enforcement side, so it's a petty misdemeanor. It also has the same way if a kid isn't wearing a life jacket in a boat today. So it's the exact same enforcement mechanisms and the way it's just to become standard and making sure that reflective life jackets are available and are there so that people can be safer on the water.
Okay, that's good, thank you.
Okay, with that, Representative Tabke, any closing comments?
No, I've said enough. I appreciate the DNR being here. I appreciate everyone's questions on it and happy to continue to work on it to get this to a good place so that we can have it in law and the standard in the future.
Very good. I renew my motion that House File 2419 as amended be laid over for possible inclusion in a future bill. Bill is laid over.
Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome. Next, we have Representative Vang, House File 2606. If you'd like to come forward, then after that, we'll have a couple of bills from Representative Finke. So House File 2602, I move that House File 2602 be laid over for possible inclusion in a future bill. Representative Vang, to your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill is, members may be quite familiar with it. This was passed during 2021 when Minnesota was going through a crazy drought as part of the drought relief package. This bill, basically what it does is just extends the date to 2029, and then it adds language that seedlings may be purchased from the private market to ensure that we have enough seedlings to spend the money on and make sure that we replant the trees that suffered during the drought.
Okay, very good. Is there anyone that would like to testify for or against the bill? Is there a Felipe Iligag?
He's stuck in transit.
He's stuck in transit, okay. So from there, we'll go to members. Are there any questions from members? Representative Nelson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And is this, if I'm trying to remember right on this, this is the DNR, is this in their nursery stock? What are these trees?
Representative Vang.
Mr. Chair, I believe it is within the DNR's jurisdiction. The funding will go to them, but I'm not sure if it's in their nursery stock. Perhaps if the DNR is here, they can.
Is there someone from the DNR that could clarify? Welcome to the committee. Please identify yourself. And if you could provide clarity on the question.
Mr. Chair, members, for the record, Bob Meyer, Assistant Commissioner, Department of Natural Resources. I heard part of the question. Could I just restate the question?
Representative Nelson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and Assistant Commissioner. I was wondering, the trees here, I was thinking they were part of the nursery stock, if I'm trying to remember back about 4 years ago when this drought was happening, but I don't remember, because there was some replacing some seedlings or something. If you could just refresh us on what these trees were.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, members. At the time the drought was occurring, there was appropriations for drought relief for other producers, farmers, and other people who were impacted by the drought. This provision allowed us to work with our local governments, our tribal partners, on replanting or purchasing new stock that was killed from the drought. As we found out, many of our partners use containerized stock or seedlings, the little dirt on them like you usually get during Arbor Day. They survived much better than our bare root seedlings that we're currently producing at Bedora. So the state does not produce any containerized stock right now. We're looking to move into that direction with our improvements, but at this time we do not do that. So there's really nobody in the state of Minnesota that provides those containerized seedlings as well. So we've been purchasing from Canada. Now that I say that, given everything that's going on, we'll have to relook. Maybe we'll need a bigger appropriation. But so this would allow us to work with private industry, but at this time, we're buying most of our seedlings from Canada because they're containerized stock. And I should say we found that the reason why it's part of the governor's budget to turn back this is the demand for the seedlings from the drought was not what we anticipated.
Representative Nelson.
I would just kind of, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just kind of wondering about the private market, but I think it's been explained well here, kind of the reason for the source of that. So, thank you.
You're welcome. Representative Hanson.
I received a text that Mr. Leskis is in the tunnel and would testify from the Minnesota Nursery and Landscape Association. I don't know which tunnel that is, but that would be representing the private market. I think they're going to testify in support of it, that if we would move on. I think that's a short summary of what I think he's going to say.
Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Representative Vang, if you heard that there really wasn't the demand for this, is there a reason when we have a $6 billion budget deficit that we're facing that you think that we should extend this appropriation?
Representative Vang.
Mr. Chair, Representative Schultz, well, I haven't heard that there's no demand to replant our trees. I mean, this was part of the package that we passed 4 years ago along with the drought relief. And so I think this is a matter of extending the date. And so the demand has remained the same, or if not even more urgent, as we've seen more extreme weather and more, the issues of climate change becoming much more hurting not just our producers, but also the urban areas too. So I don't believe that there is less of a demand compared to the drought relief 4 years ago.
Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, just to highlight, Mr. Meyer a moment ago stated that there wasn't the demand to use all of the resources that are currently in this fund, and it's why Governor Walz's budget suggests shrinking, or I should say canceling, this appropriation. So that's what I'm referencing. It's that, these would have been expended had there been the demand in our state for the amount that was appropriated.
Thank you, Representative Schultz. I do see we have our testifier who was held up getting here. If you'd like, I'll make an exception to take testimony if you'd like to introduce yourself. And if you could keep your comments short, please.
Yes, I will. Good afternoon now, I guess. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Felipe Yescas with the Minnesota Nursery and Landscape Association. We represent about 1,200 business members throughout the state. And I am here in support of this bill, House File 2602, because it opens up the market to the private sector, and it's allowing us to do our part to combat the impacts of the drought season. In the past, we have seen the impacts of the droughts in different settings, including this one, and I think that we can all do a good job of replenishing our lands with seedlings.
Thank you for your testimony. Any final questions for members? Hearing none, Representative Vang, any closing comments?
No closing comments. Just want to thank the committee for your time.
I renew my motion that House File 2602 be laid over for possible inclusion in the future. Bill is laid over. Thank you, Representative Vang, for being here today. Next, we have Representative Finke, House File 2620. If you'd like to come forward, Representative Finke, would you like to move your bill?
Yes, I would like to move House File 2620 to be laid over for possible inclusion.
Very good. Representative Finke, to your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. 2620, let me make sure I have, these are two bills that go together, so I want to make sure I have the right one. Yes, 2620 is a $10 million appropriation for emerald ash borer response. We are continuing the work that we have been doing, addressing what is a major statewide crisis, and we have to keep the work going. We have 1 billion ash trees in the state of Minnesota, and they're all at risk. So we need to make sure we are not just responding with removal, but also handling waste. Wood waste is a significant issue that cities are dealing with, and we need to keep the ball moving. Thank you.
Very good. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to testify for or against this bill? Seeing none, members, questions? Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Finke, my understanding was there was money that was appropriated to this in the previous biennium. Are all those dollars expended, and how did that go with the money that was appropriated?
I would think that we might need Representative Finke, do you have that information? Or
I do not have the information if it's all expended at this moment, but I'm sure we can find that out.
Okay, I see fiscal staff doesn't know at this point in time. If you'd like to go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I don't have the numbers with me. There are a variety of appropriations that went for a variety of tree purposes to both the Met Council and DNR. I don't have those numbers with me.
Would anyone in the DNR possibly have that information? We may need could you please repeat the question for Assistant Commissioner Meyer? Welcome back to the table, Assistant Commissioner Meyer. Representative Schultz will repeat his question for you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And the question was, a lot of money went to this. I remember Representative Finke being very excited about these appropriations 2 years ago. And I'm looking to find out if this funding that was dedicated for this purpose has been expended, or to what extent there is money remaining.
Assistant Commissioner Meyer.
Mr. Chair, Representative Schultz, part of these appropriations went to the Department of Natural Resources. This bill goes to the Met Council again. Part of it goes to DNR. About half the first year money was awarded. We're looking to issue our second piece of the RFP this summer. So it'd be the other half of that appropriation, approximately $8 million, I believe. I can clarify all those numbers and get back to the committee. I don't have, I have it on my phone, but it will take me a little bit to find it.
No, I appreciate that. We'll look forward to having the information come back. Representative Finke.
Yes, thank you. I would say to your question, Representative Schultz, this is a significant problem with every single city in the 7-county, and most of the cities outside are going to face. The money is moving. The community grant money here to the Met Council is in high demand. I hear consistently for the need to get these grants out. So if it's not out in the last year of the biennium, I am confident it will be out this one. And that seems to be what the assistant commissioner is also saying.
All right, very good. Representative Schultz.
Yeah, just my quick follow-up, Mr. Chair, is what I want to know is the money that was appropriated, did that achieve the goal? Did we get what was needed done? And I know that we haven't finished this biennium, but can we really, without the data, can we really be expending additional dollars, especially in this moment, if we don't know the extent to which the problem has been solved?
Representative Finke.
I think, Representative Schultz, we did not solve the emerald ash borer in the last 2 years. This is going to be a decade or more long problem, and it's going to take continuous funding, because once we stop, the emerald ash borer will continue and we will lose 1 billion trees. No, the problem has not been solved in 2 years. It is a gigantic statewide problem. And I was very excited, and I remain excited, because as you said a month ago, we can all agree that we need trees.
Very good. Okay, next I'll move on to Representative Jordan. Excuse me, Jacob. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair Fischer. So in my part of the state, southeast Minnesota, this has already gone through. We've dealt with it. It was entirely on the private sector. There was no government funding available. And I happen to be in the firewood business for 30 years. There's profit to be made on two fronts, both in the tree removal and then again in the reselling. Why should we involve government to add yet a third front in the profitability of this business?
Representative Finke.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Jacob. And all of the work I have done in the last 2 years on emerald ash borer, and it has been extensive, that has not been a solution that the industry seems to think will manage the amount of waste we have from emerald ash borer. What we are seeing in the city of St. Paul, the amount of waste, the amount of product that is being, the amount of trees, not product, the amount of trees that are being taken down and having to be dealt with just on the public land, let alone on private land, goes far beyond any market use that wood could find.
Representative Jacob.
Why wouldn't the same process that worked in Winona and Rochester work in the metro? Work fine there.
Representative Finke.
Yeah, the volume is not the same. The number of trees, ash trees that are planted in the Twin Cities metro area that came directly from the post-Dutch elm disease problem in the 70s. We planted basically all ash trees, and the volume is simply too large in the Twin Cities. 70% of trees that line our streets in the metro area are ash trees, more and more on public lands. And I mean, if that were an option that when we were discussing the big emerald ash borer bill, when I was talking to all of the industry members, it was repeatedly told to me, and I believe this, that there was simply not an option for a profitable use for all of that wood waste.
Representative Hansen.
Just for the record, the first public appropriation for emerald ash borer was in 2009 to the initial outbreak in southeastern Minnesota, highlighted in Winona County, $2 million public money from the Outdoor Heritage Council, Lessard Sams.
Okay. Not Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a closing comment. I think the issues that have been raised are concerning relative to the issue, and I'm just going to continue to point out what is, I think, the obvious, that we have a very challenging circumstance with a looming deficit. And in addition to the concerns, like I had just said, that have already been raised, the cost is significant. And just going to put that on the record for members also and for the public.
Okay. Thank you, Co-Chair Heinzman. Representative Finke, closing comments.
Yes, thank you for the conversation. I'll just confirm, we did get the numbers. It's really 50-50, has been spent to will be spent this summer from the appropriation in the last biennium. The cost of not solving this problem will be far, far greater, and I appreciate your support.
Very good. Representative Finke renews her motion that House File 2620 be laid over for possible inclusion in a future bill. The bill is laid over. Next, we have Representative Finke once again for House File 2621, Community Tree Planting. Representative Finke, would you like to move your bill?
Yes, I move that House File 2621 be laid over for possible inclusion.
Representative Finke, to your bill.
This is a grant to, or an appropriation to the Met Council for $3 million in tree planting for the metro area.
Okay, Representative Finke, thank you for that. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to testify for either for or against the bill? Not seeing any. Members, questions? Representative Gilman.
Thank you, Chair Fischer. So quick question in regards to, we talked about this last year, I believe. You know, we planted we planted the ash tree in response to Dutch elm disease. And then here, you know, a couple decades later, then we're having all these issues. Did the Met Council do research, or the DNR do research on which trees to plant? We talked about zones and trees and just what would be resistant to other bugs, things like that.
Representative Finke.
Yes, thank you, Chair Fischer and Representative Gilman. That's a great question and an important one, making sure that we do not repeat the mistakes of the past. And this tree grant money, it does require a diverse species and looks to prioritize native species.
Representative Purcell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Finke, for continuing to be the tree lady. And I think this is going to be an ongoing problem and challenge, and there's no silver bullet. So appreciate you bringing some bills to try to address it. And I think just another piece of the conversation is the moving of either firewood or infected trees too, and that is absolutely a concern. And where these facilities are and how the state gets involved is more complicated than it might seem. So thanks for tackling that.
Co-chair Heinzman.
Co-Chair Fischer. More a comment than anything else. Again, this is another bill that continues to put pressure on the general fund. And we've known for over a year that we have a looming deficit. I hope that, because these priorities are important, I don't dispute that for the city of Minneapolis and for the Metropolitan Council, that should this particular bill be unsuccessful, I hope that the other opportunities that communities have accessed, whether that be with the LCCMR or other grants, could be considered, where there are lottery dollars or perhaps legacy dollars that could be made available, as opposed to continuing with bill after bill to suggest that we put more pressure on the general fund. That is my comment, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chair Heinzman. Representative Finke, any closing comments?
Yes, thank you, Chair Fischer and Chair Heinzman. I appreciate everybody's interest. I care deeply about tree policy. It will save us a lot of money if we plant trees and we get rid of our shade deserts and take care of our communities. So appreciate that, and I look forward to your support.
Thank you, Representative Finke. Representative Finke renews her motion that House File 2621 be laid over for possible inclusion in a future bill. The bill is laid over. Next bill we have on the agenda is House File 2861, which is Representative Curran. Representative Curran, if you'd like to come forward, please. I will move that your House File 2681 be laid over for possible inclusion in a future bill. Representative Curran, to your bill.
Thank you so much, chairs and members, for hearing House File 2861 for consideration today. For a little bit of background, House File 2861, it builds on work that was done in a bipartisan way last biennium to address some significant water issues in the Northeast metro area. Just a brief background on this. There were the city of White Bear Lake, the lake itself experienced significant low level that led to some lawsuits, and that led to the city of Lake Elmo nearby not being able to issue the amount of permits that they needed to serve their residents. And so this really was a significant issue for the region. And so we passed a bill that allowed to lift some of those moratoriums to allow for water to continue to be used. At the same time, we were able to pass an appropriation and a plan for a whole bunch of stakeholders in that area, including representatives from all of the cities that it affects. And so this House File 2861 would be a continuation of those funds so that we can complete that study and try to resolve some of the water level issues that we do have in the region. And I'll say that this affects the cities of Stillwater, Matamidi, Hugo, Lake Elmo, Lino Lakes, North St. Paul, Oakdale, Vadnais Heights, Shoreview, Woodbury, New Brighton, and White Bear Lake and White Bear Township. So not just for my district, but it's a comprehensive area. And Chair, if you have any comments on the bill as well, I know we've worked very closely together on this.
Thank you, Representative Curran, and I will add that this is not only addressing the area in the White Bear Lake Northeast metro area, but there's also dollars because we have water management areas that are currently set up in a number of areas in the state of Minnesota. And we want to make sure that the efforts that the DNR has going on are being funded not only in the metro area, but in the outstate areas where things are already underway in some areas and may be brewing in others. So we want to make sure that the DNR has the resources that they will need as these things pop up in the future. Questions? First of all, excuse me, is there anyone in the audience that would like to testify for or against the bill? Not seeing any. Members, questions? Representative Schultz, I think, got it first, and then Chair Heinzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Curran, could you share with us what's the stated end goal on this particular project?
Representative Curran.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Representative Schultz. So the end goal is to really try to see if we can gather more information about why the lake was being depleted, if it was truly due to overuse, or if it has natural causes, or if it's a combination of both, and to try to study that so that in the future, or as we're using water in the region, that we have an educated sense of where that water is going and how we can best utilize it. So if it was in fact overuse, then we're going to need to look at other ways, other water resources in the area, or bringing water from somewhere else. Of course, if it's naturally depleting, that's a different issue to tackle. But it's ultimately what we're trying to gather is does does the watershed in White Bear Lake, as it stands currently, do we need to implement some more systems there? Or is there a natural ebb and flow that we don't need to be as concerned about as there were large concerns when the lake was really low? So sort of trying to get at, when the lake was really low, is that the lowest it's going to get? Was that a natural occurrence? Or were we contributing to that issue, and should we be looking at other measures to get water in the area?
And could add on to that too, is that one of the things that was also part of that is when taking a look at is if the area is being overpumped, is what are the solutions to come back? Is some of the communities in that area are on surface water, some are on a blend of surface water, aquifer, a lot are on the aquifer. And if it's deemed that the aquifer is indeed under stress from use, is it's trying to figure out how the communities come forward with what are the answers of how we try to take a look at that. I know that when the Met Council was looking at this issue a number of years ago, one of the things they came out with is saying that if we need to do something different in water supply and do more of a community and rethink of having to use more surface water, you might be looking at something that the area communities could be spending up to $500 million trying to solve this across the entire area, so that you could have the areas that are built out could continue to supply the people they have, and the areas that are growing would be able to have the water resources to meet the demands for the area as it continues to grow in there. Lake Elmo, Woodbury, those areas are high growing areas, and at the same time they've got an aquifer that is also contaminated with PFAS. So you've got a number of issues that are being researched and dealt with at the same time. Chair Heinzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Representative Curran, I'm hearing comments about overuse of the lake. Could maybe you help me understand what others, maybe not yourself, but others are implying by that?
Chair Heinzman, I'll take the first shot at this, is that the models that were originally put together by the DNR that was funded with money from the state of Minnesota has identified that it appears that there is in areas of the Northeast Metro an overpumping out the aquifer. They determined at that point in time that it was not significantly impacting the lake, but it did have a drawdown on what was happening on the surface water feature there. And state statute does require that the DNR does manage their water appropriations in a cumulative way. And so if you've got a region under stress, as we've seen in other areas of the state where we have some water management areas of trying to figure out how do we use the water in a way that is sustainable for future generations. And so these are the kind of things that have led to where we are out there. While everyone sees Minnesota's having lots of water out there, there are parts of the state where it is tough. If you go down to the southwest corner of the state, down there is their water is coming in from the Missouri River because it is very tight. So it looks differently in different areas. And what they're trying to do here is try to figure out what is the box of tools that could be used in this area, because each area you're going to probably have to use a different box of tools because it looks differently as we're dealing with our water issues in the state. Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was, so understanding this, and by the way, for both of you, like, this is just helpful for us all to understand, especially for the upcoming weeks and for the long-term future. So my next question is just really, so this sends $1 million to the Metropolitan Council. So my question is, for your area, and you referenced it, different cities, communities, and I think in this instance, counties too, have, are impacted here. So is there a reason you chose the Metropolitan Council, and then ultimately on that which is prepared, is it still underneath the jurisdiction of the DNR? And to what extent does that interact with one another?
I'll jump on first on that is, first of all, in terms of the Met Council, the reason Met Council was chosen on that is one of the responsibilities is overseeing planning for the entire metropolitan area. And what they're acting is as the facilitator here. They're not saying you have to choose A, B, or C, but they also have the technical advisory. They've got the engineers who, if the community say, have you tried solution A? They can go back to their engineers and say, okay, if we go solution A, this is what it's going to cost, and this is what it would look like. So this is the reason that the Met Council, because they've got the resources. The individual communities themselves don't have that resource to be able to take a look across the angle of what happens when you're starting mixed water chemistry, because when the Met Council is pulling their experts together, they're taking people who are also in the public water supplies, taking a look at what happens when you're dealing with the chemistry of one water system mixing with another water system, so you don't create a situation like Flint, Michigan that happened a number of years ago. We've learned how water chemistry is important in those areas. So these are some things that they're looking at. DNR does does have a share of it because some of the appropriations are groundwater and surface water, and the DNR is in charge of issuing permits for groundwater and surface water. And as a result, when they issue those permits, they have to do it that it's in a sustainable way across the region. I know that one of the things that came out at one point is that when the DNR was first taking a look at some of the corrections that they might have to take, they at one point were saying that if they needed to do corrections at that point in time, they would only allow communities to provide surface water to the domestic use. So as we've talked about before, there are 6 different levels of use of users in the water statute. And what they would do is they were going to say it's only limited to the number 1 use, which is domestic use. Right now, domestic use is homes. It does not include hospitals or schools or businesses or any of those. And this is what was part of what was causing it come to a head, because they were seeing that they were being ordered to say you've got to start cutting back, and this is where they're first going. So what they're trying to do is come up with a solution here so that the DNR doesn't have to go to the extreme and have the communities themselves figure out what is the solution to our water problems in the area. How do we share it? How do we reuse water? That's one of the things they're looking at. It's not just what we have for first-time water coming through, but what are reuses that are out there and how to use our water reuses more responsibly. So these are things that are in it. Representative Curran.
Thank you, Chair. And just to add to that, Representative Schultz, excuse me, I appreciate the questions about Met Council. And it's something that's unique to our region here. One of the significant reasons that we have Met Council as part of this process is the issue that we ran into is the Met Council had told the Lake Elmo area, or had their planning recommendations were for growth, for residential growth. However, when we looked at the water concerns and then the lawsuit that occurred with with White Bear Lake and the water levels, that lawsuit that we corrected with legislation last biennium had put a moratorium that then Lake Elmo couldn't access their nearby water because it's contaminated with PFAS. They couldn't, access water from the White Bear Lake because then there was the moratorium on that. It was sort of an arbitrary circle that a judge sort of made on a map and said you can't use more water in this area. And that directly conflicted with the Met Council's suggested plans for the region. And so it was really important that we have Met Council as part of this so that when we're having planning discussions and trying to plan for growth, that we're at the same time addressing the resources that are available. And so there was a clear conflict there. And so it's our hope and goal that the Met Council establish this working group. They have been working on it. In addition to the cities that I mentioned, just for the committee to know that the DNR, Commissioner of Health, MPCA, and representatives from the Metropolitan Area Water Supply Advisory Committee, members from the St. Paul Regional Water Services, in addition to all of those cities, are all part of this working group. And as Chair Fischer sort of mentioned, as these cities are looking at water resources in our collective area, it makes sense for everyone to be at the same table because, when we've got Hugo that is in a different county than White Bear Lake, but literally just up the road, and they've got water issues. It makes no sense for these smaller cities next to each other to be doing their own planning and putting up their own funds when we could have everybody at the table to begin with and work together on a project that not only uses our resources the most efficiently, our water resources, but financially, it could be a huge savings for all of the cities involved to be working together from the start.
Rep. Schultz, further comment?
Yes, just quickly. So on that, and I think I'm understanding it, and I really appreciate the time that you both spent explaining it in greater detail. And I guess my long-term curiosity will be, who ultimately kind of has decision-making power, whether it's more at the DNR level or the Metropolitan Council level, which we can, have further conversations about that.
Thank you. Chair Heinzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
And I'm not sure if my question is for the chair or for the testifier. Maybe you might have wanted to carry this bill, Chair Fischer, but I am wondering, my line of questioning was leading up to my line of questioning from earlier. I was wondering if surface water appropriations were allowed off the lake and if that was part of the pressure that was being referred to in comments.
I'm sorry, I've been kind of in the middle of this for many years, and so on jumping in on here is, there is some very limited, and by limited, that's some of the people that were around the lake were using some of that a little bit on their lawns. I know that's been looked at. The biggest part of the water usage that has been putting pressure on is what's happening in the underlying aquifer. Does that answer your question?
That helps, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Chair Heinzman.
No, that really was what I was kind of driving at. I was confused when that was mentioned earlier, what the uses might have been that was being referred to in comments. So, other than the final question I would have, I'm about to, I think we can wrap on this, but I am wondering if this isn't successful as an appropriation from the general fund, Representative Curran, is there another alternative that's being considered?
This is one of the things that we're putting together, but I'll go ahead, Representative Curran. This is one of the things as we're looking at putting together our budget. There's always different funds that could sometimes be looked at for some of these. It comes down to what the restrictions are of the different fees and funds that we have out there. Anything else that you'd like to add, Representative Curran?
Thank you, Chair. Just looking for your permission to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
It's okay. Yeah, to answer that question, Chair Heinzman, and sort of goes along with where Rep. Schultz was coming from too, there's still abundant local government input on all of this. And so as we proceed through this, the goal, the hope is that we can collectively as a region find some solutions. Should we not get where we want to get with this group, I think that would be really, that certainly would be a disappointment for all the cities involved, but I think what we learn along the way is well worth it. And just to initiate that collaboration between cities, that's something that I don't see going away. We've started the work now. We need the funding now. But should that run out, I think we have at least gotten to a good place where cities are getting really well informed with what each other's needs are and what the region's needs are and how everybody can come to the table. So ultimately, we're still looking at a heck of a lot of local government input and not having the region completely dictated by Met Council or DNR. There's a ton of local input on that.
All right.
Nothing further.
Okay, thank you. Representative Curran, I will take that as your closing comments. Thank you for presenting the bill. With that, I renew my motion that House File 2861 be laid over for possible inclusion in a future bill. The bill is laid over. Next on the agenda is House File 820, Representative Jordan. Representative Jordan, would you like to move your bill?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Jordan. Representative Jordan moves that House File 820 be laid over for possible inclusion in a future bill. Representative Jordan, would you like to go ahead? I understand you have an author's amendment. Would you like to move the A1 author's amendment and briefly explain it?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I would move the A1 amendment, and I would defer to Mr. LeBeau to explain the A1 amendment. And we're still working on this, but if there's more work that needs to be done, it's being laid over, which will give us time to do that. But to talk a little bit more about the direction we're going, I would defer to Mr. LeBeau.
Okay, the A1 amendment is moved. Mr. LeBeau, if you'd like to go ahead and explain it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Reed LeBeau, and I represent the 1854 Treaty Authority. It was the intention that the A1 amendment be a delete-all amendment, and just that line of text in the amendment remain in the bill. So Section 2 and Section 3 would be deleted in the amendment.
Okay, I think that's not real clear in the A1 here, so I am going to revert over to Ms. Janelle Taylor. If you could help us with this, please.
Sure, Mr. Chair and members, if that is the intent, you could orally amend the A1 amendment to remove sections 2 and 3.
Okay, going to the author, would you be all right with the oral amendment, incorporating that oral amendment to remove sections 2 and 3? Is that what I was hearing, Ms. Taylor?
Mr. Chair, if I understood their intent,
That's what I would recommend.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'm fine with that oral amendment if committee members are fine with that oral amendment.
Okay. We have the oral amendment before us. Could staff please repeat the oral amendment?
Mr. Chair and members, on the A1 amendment, you would add page 1, delete sections 2 and 3.
Delete 2 and 3. Okay, are there any questions on the oral amendment? Hearing, and I'm just going to double check to make sure I'm getting the right procedure on this. Right, so we're incorporating this into the A1 amendment. Do we need to vote on this being incorporated in, or can we, no, okay, so this oral amendment for deleting sections 2 and 3 is incorporated into the A1 amendment. Okay.
So, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
An easier way for members to think about this is that this is basically a DE.
All right. Questions? Representative Nelson.
Thanks for this, Mr. Chair, and I'm just wondering if we could just get a high-level overview of what this ends up doing with the delete all.
Mr. LeBeau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Nelson. With the issue that we're trying to address with this specific language, twofold. It recognizes the fact that we understand what the budget targets are and that the appropriation that was in there is not within the target of the committee. As well, Section 2, this was language that was included in the bill last year when we ran this, and that was taken out at that time as well. That was language that we had talked to the department about over a year ago, and they concluded they didn't want it in there, so we were fine removing it. The language in the delete all that we do want to continue with and have go forward is simply addresses a sort of chicken and egg issue that we've had with the department, where there's an underlying agreement, there's the underlying treaty, and there's just the question of whether or not we have to have statutory authorization beforehand or after the fact, when and if there is a renegotiation of the memorandum of understanding. So this just addresses that piece of it.
Okay. Are there any other questions on the A1? Otherwise, I'd like to go ahead and get the A1 adopted, and we'll continue discussion on the bill as amended, which will be dropping sections 2 and 3 and just adding in the language in the A1. All in favor of the A1 amendment with the oral amendment on, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The amendment is approved. The bill is approved, or we now have the bill 820 before us as amended. And I believe Representative Schultz, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One, I think we should try and understand a little bit better what the effect of the amendment is. And so I know we've heard from Mr. LeBeau about that. From my understanding, we should potentially hear from the DNR about that. I guess that's where I'd begin.
Okay. All right. If we could have the DNR then come up. Welcome back to the committee, Assistant Commissioner Meyer. Were you able to follow what was done with the amendments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you for the record, Bob Meyer, Assistant Commissioner, Department of Natural Resources, and thank you for the author for moving that amendment. We did have some grave concerns about the treaty open season language and the fiscal impact of the bill. I've also handed out to the committee members just a spreadsheet that helps people understand how these treaty payments are calculated. And if you look at the base language, 97A.157, the entire section, it outlines how these payments are keyed off to the Leech Lake Band payments. So in statute, our agreement with the Leech Lake Band is they get 5% of the sales of our hunting and fishing licenses are awarded to the Leech Lake Band. And then that's on the back side of this calculator here. And then we take that amount, take 1.5 million, subtract it from that to calculate the 1854 treaty payments, if that makes any sense. It's easier to follow on the spreadsheet and how the math works. So if you just look at, on the first page, it's A, which for 2025 was 2.998454 million. And then you would subtract, look at B and C on the other side. So in actuality, the bands have been receiving a payment in FY '24 and '25 of approximately $6 million a year. Previous to that, it was little bit between 3.5 and 3.5 million. So the 1.6 that is referenced is actually more than that, because you take that and you add the fishing license percentages to that. With that all being said, there's a huge memorandum of agreement that's available and that statute references to on how these payments are calculated, or what we're purchasing, what we're buying, what rights are we're getting for these dollars. And it's basically to keep off reservation hunt, fishing, gathering from tribal members. We're buying that right from them, basically. So the payment hasn't been adjusted, but the agreement also talks about an arbitration clause, which we could enter into at any time with both bands. Both parties could enter into it. We have not been contacted to do that. And then additionally, we would need to come back, because the department cannot hold bind future legislatures to any fiscal agreement. So we could discuss a payment, but we would still have to come back to the legislature to have those dollars appropriated and finally ratified. I just encourage you to do this very carefully. There were some tribal issues that were funded in previous biennium that has caused what has been reported in the press as a tribal war legislatively created between Red Lake and Fond du Lac Band. And since Fond du Lac is not a member of 1854, but they do have treaty rights in the ceded territory, I urge us to all proceed very cautiously.
Thank you, Assistant Commissioner Meyer. And before I take any more questions, I have not had a chance to open up to testifiers yet. First, I'll go to Mr. LeBeau. Were there any additional testimony that you wanted to offer on the bill?
No, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think I've covered the substance of the language that we're asking you to consider, and I'm just happy to answer any questions anyone has.
All right, very good. And then Assistant Commissioner Meyer, were there any additional comments, testimony that you'd like to offer?
No, sir.
Okay. Next, is there anyone in the audience that would like to testify for or against the bill? Not seeing any. Members, back to further questions. Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This feels about as clear as mud at the moment. Just so I just kind of want to understand, I heard Assistant Commissioner Meyer's comments, and at the same time, while expressing caution, are you able to comment on how you feel about or where the DNR is at in regards to how the bill has now changed and as it is, as amended?
Assistant Commissioner Meyer.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Schultz, as I stated, we thank the author for the amendments. We'd look forward to working with the legislature and the bands on these issues. We could enter into arbitration with them just by a registered letter, the way I understand it, to discuss these issues and come back. So if this does pass into law, we will certainly do that. If the 1854 or the bands would like to enter into arbitration, they could certainly contact the DNR and through the formal process in the agreement and initiate that as well.
Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just note that just from what I'm hearing, we may, as a state, not want to enter into this based upon what I've heard so far, and we should just proceed with caution.
Okay, appreciate the input. Thank you. Other questions? Not seeing any. Representative Jordan, final closing comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a bill, happy to work on it with all of the parties involved. And this is a continuation for folks just to remember of the work that Representative Kozlowski did last year on this payment issue. And then just to remind folks that the rights that these sovereign nations have are retained rights. So these are not rights that are given by the state of Minnesota. These are rights that are retained. So with that, I'm happy to lay over House File 820 as amended for further consideration. Thank you.
Representative Jordan renews her motion that House File 820 as amended be laid over for possible inclusion in future bill. The bill is laid over.
Welcome to the testifiers table. Co-Chair Fischer, would you like to move House File 3007 before the committee?
Thank you. I'd like to move House File 3007 to be laid over for a possible inclusion in a future bill.
Excellent. Would you also at this time like to move your A2 authors amendment?
Yes, I would like to move the A2 authors amendment. There's a couple of things that are happening. Is first of all, the first part of the amendment, lines 1.1 through 1.15. This is technical assistance that I received from the DNR addressing the base underlying bill of House File 3007. And then the second part is of the amendment, lines 1.16 through actually goes down to 2.10. This is to create a water atlas to help guide large water users in the state going forward. So this is what I would like to have to get my bill into shape.
Excellent. So Chair Fischer moves the A2 amendment to get the bill in the form that he would like. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. 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 All those opposed, no. The motion prevails. The A2 amendment is adopted. Chair Fischer, to your bill as amended.
Yes, thank you, Chair Purcell. Committee, I appreciate the opportunity to present House File 3007. This does several different things. Number one, it's putting forward a pre-application evaluation for large water appropriation users. We are seeing more and more situations where we're having businesses coming into the state or within the state wanting to appropriate large uses of water. And so what we're trying to do is provide some definitions and clarity as we're dealing with these issues going forward. It also wants to make sure that we're crafting the permit conditions for large water users and also addressing the issue where we've got data centers involved with this situation. And then finally, the part that we just added on is one of the things that I've heard anecdotally from people and some frustration sometimes from people in different agencies is that they've had businesses coming into the state and start siting in different communities and then find out a little bit later into the process that the amount of water they may need is not available. As we heard earlier, there's parts of our state where we don't have large amounts of water. And if we've got large water users coming in, it'd be great to have some kind of atlas to give them a general idea, not specific, but general idea what parts of the state you should be looking at or not looking at. So it's something that's a work in process out there. I know that the DNR has some feedback that I'm looking at incorporating in. And so with that, I do know that there are a number of testifiers.
There are indeed. Thank you, Chair Fischer. Testifiers, we have a decent number of testifiers. Our first on the list is Sarah Meridian from CURE, and on deck is Darren Broughton from Minnesota Agri-Growth. If you are able to please keep your comments to about 1.5 minutes, or I will ask you to wrap it up. Thank you. Please introduce yourself to the committee and proceed.
Thank you, Chair Purcell, Chair Fischer, committee members. My name is Sarah Meridian, and I'm the Government Relations and Policy Director for CURE. I appreciate the opportunity to testify in support of House File 3007 as amended today. In the interest of time, please refer to our written testimony for our complete comments on the bill. Minnesota finds itself facing sudden and intense interest from companies seeking to build hyperscale data centers throughout the state. But our understanding of the cumulative and long-term impacts of the development of this industry on our water, land, energy systems, and communities lags far behind. Clearly, Minnesota needs to address if and how we want data centers to be built and operate in our state. House File 3007 provides a starting point from which Minnesotans can have those essential conversations. This committee has already considered and passed a bill written by Amazon Data Services for an exemption from the Certificate of Need process before our state has had any chance to fully understand just what we're being asked to give away. Now, House File 3007 gives you the opportunity to act in your constituents' best interests and allow Minnesotans to drive the needed conversations about data centers instead of some of the most powerful and wealthy for-profit corporations in the world. We ask for your support of House File 3007. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for keeping under time. Next is Darren Broughton, and our next two testifiers after that will be Andrew Morley and Michelle Benson. Welcome to the committee, and please state your name and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair. Darren Broughton, Executive Director of Minnesota Agri-Growth. I want to thank Chair Fischer for bringing forward House File 3008. It is essential that we protect Minnesota's groundwater supply. And while House File 3008's primary goal is to address groundwater usage for proposed data centers, The proposed 100 million gallon threshold also impacts Minnesota's agriculture industry. As the state is looking to attract sustainable aviation fuel facilities to reduce the carbon footprint of the airline industry, those facilities would use more than 100 million gallons a year. Likewise, medium and large dairy farms in the state also reach that threshold, and it is through that lens that AgriGrowth views House File 3008. If the intent of the legislation is to streamline the DNR's water appropriation process, AgriGrowth is interested in this conversation. Subdivision 5G provides new assurances to project proposers that initial conversations with the DNR and other state agencies are confidential. This is important because it allows the agencies and project proposers to discuss specific water quantity needs before a site is selected and an application is submitted. Today, many project proposers are reluctant to have those early conversations, knowing that those conversations are not protected. AgriGrowth expects these conversations to streamline the DNR's permitting process.
If you were able to wrap up your comments, please.
Yep. I also just want to appreciate the provisions in there about water conservation measures and technology. Many of our large dairies have already incorporated water conservation measures that have reduced water usage by 20 or 30%. And right now, the DNR, there's a general feeling that the DNR discounts those measures, so we appreciate those pieces. Lastly, I just want to raise one significant concern on line 3.6. It's a provision that gives the DNR new ambiguous authority to deny a water appropriation permit because it's not in the public's interest. Project proposers need clear rules and guidance when investing in a project that needs a government permit. That language does not provide that clarity.
Thank you, Mr. Broughton.
Thank you.
And our next testifiers, Andrew Morley and Michelle Benson. Please identify yourselves for the committee. As you're from the same organization, please keep your testimony to 1.5 minutes. Sure.
Welcome.
Co-Chair Fischer, Co-Chair Heinzman, my name is Andrew Morley, and I'm singing a duet today with my colleague Michelle Benson on HF 3007. We're on a team that represents the Chamber's more than 6,300 businesses and their more than 500,000 employees. Section 1 includes vague and unenforceable language that would increase complexity and uncertainty in state permitting that we're working to improve on. For example, applicants could be subject to an endless loop of submitting and resubmitting additional information, whether or not it's material for permit approval. The bill encourages, quote, encourages applicants to discuss the project with the commissioner and requires city or county employees to notify the commissioner of any potential applicant contact. This requirement would be challenging from a notification, compliance, and enforcement standpoint. We also are concerned with requiring an environmental impact statement as a blanket review for any project meeting these conditions. The agency should undergo a rulemaking to see if these projects should be added to mandatory category EISs to maximize public input. We respectfully suggest further legislative debate and consideration before moving the proposal forward. Thank you, Co-Chair Fischer, and I'll turn it over to Michelle.
Thank you. Michelle Benson, Energy Policy Director for the Minnesota Chamber. Data centers will be critical infrastructure for the innovative technologies of the future, and innovation has been a hallmark of Minnesota companies for decades. Prior to 2013, Minnesota GDP growth outpaced national GDP growth. But since 2013, we have lagged the country in GDP growth. We now rank 40th of 50 states. Owners' permitting burdens will contribute to a lagging economy. Increased regulatory burdens will slow the growth of innovation in the state. In this committee, we ask you to debate the balance of economic growth and protection of the environment. Data centers will contribute to our tax base and our economic growth.
Please
but they are
conclude your
also
comments, Ms.
stewards-
Benson.
Thank you. They are also working to be good stewards of the environment. We believe that the provisions in House File 3007 will give data center investors a reason to look elsewhere. We ask that you further debate these issues in light of the changes rapidly happening in the data center industry. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next up is Julia Nerbonin. I'm sorry, you'll have to correct my pronunciation, followed by Patty O'Keefe. Please state your name for the record. Welcome to the committee. Please attempt to keep your comments to about 1.5 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Julia Nerbin, and thank you for having me, Chair Fischer and members of the committee. So my name is Julia Nerbin, and I'm the Executive Director of Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light, where we work with faith communities across the state to promote climate solutions that are both equitable and effective. And I'm here to express our support for House File 3007.
We think it represents an important step towards greater precautions, planning, and community engagement in data center development in Minnesota. Since 2011, when initial legislation regarding data centers was passed, the resource intensity of data centers, their land, their water, their energy use, et cetera, as well as the burdens that they pose to their communities has grown significantly. We're in a very different world today than we were in 2011. So we have concerns. You've heard these before. We're concerned about lack of transparency about the projects with the communities that will host them. We're concerned about water and energy use. We're concerned about inappropriate zoning and community impact. And we're particularly concerned about tax incentives. The cost to taxpayers has grown significantly since 2011 when these data centers were much smaller. And we know that these tech companies that are proposing to build these data centers are among the richest in the world. So it is right that we use this moment to evaluate how data centers can operate as good neighbors, both now and in the future. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Nurbinen. And our next testifier, please identify yourself. And next up after Ms. O'Keefe will be Aaron Klemps. Hello, chairs and committee members. My name is Patty O'Keefe. I'm the Midwest Regional Director with Vote Solar. Thank you to Chair Fischer for introducing this bill. The United Nations projects a 40% global freshwater shortage by 2030 if current usage patterns continue. U.S. water demand is expected to rise due to population growth, agriculture, and industry, especially in arid regions. The western U.S. alone could see a 20 to 30% reduction in water availability by 2050. Data centers rely on water-intensive cooling systems that consume millions of gallons of drinking water each year. A single data center can consume up to 5 million gallons of water per day, and they are increasing their need for fresh water over time. Microsoft's water consumption increased by 34% between 2021 and 22. Google's water consumption went up nearly 22% over the same period to 5.56 billion gallons per year. Based on these realities, we believe the provisions in this bill are common sense. And while we frankly consider this a floor for water protection from data centers, it's a relief to advocates like us who have until now been concerned about the lack of substantive conversation about guardrails. We support this legislation, but urge stronger protections for Minnesota's water. Data centers should be prohibited from using groundwater, and closed-loop water systems must be required. Public transparency is critical. Each project's siting data should be public, and communities must have a say in water use decisions. Water efficiency measures should be mandatory, not optional, and aquifer testing must be required in permitting. You might think this is a lot to ask of companies, but these are the richest corporations in the world building these data centers. We think it's fair to expect that if they plan to do this, they do it responsibly. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Ms. O'Keefe. Next up, Aaron Klemps, and then followed by the last speaker on my list is Katie Smith. Please state your name for the record, welcome to the committee, and begin your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Fischer, Chair Heinzman, and members of the committee. My name is Aaron Klemps. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at the Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy, or MCEA. We're a public interest law firm and an advocacy organization with over 50 years of experience defending Minnesota's environment and the health of its people. We support HF 3007 and thank Representative Fischer for his work on this bill. This bill is a good first step toward comprehensively addressing the downsides to people and the environment from an explosion of data center development interest in Minnesota. MCA particularly appreciates the enhanced environmental review requirements for hyperscale data centers, the attention to data center electricity consumption and movement toward accountability in water consumption. HF 3007 is a welcome step toward a balanced approach to data centers in state law. So far this legislative session, bills have been heard on data centers that have been giving them faster and easier tax breaks, exempting data centers from our environmental laws. And this bill is a refreshing change from that trend. We do think this language could be strengthened. The advance notice and early consideration of siting with regard to water resources is good, although we think that it should be mandatory instead of encouraged. We also know that because so many of these data center proposals piggyback on existing municipal water permits, that's a way to avoid existing statutory requirements to look at the sustainability of the use, look at environmental review and other sorts of laws that already exist in statute. So it's not about putting new standards in place, but really ensuring the ones that are already in statute apply. Lastly, we want to put out the oar here for requiring reporting of metals used in construction and operation.
is the landfilling of metals-intensive servers every few years means that we're going to adding more and more to the e-waste problem in Minnesota, and addressing inappropriate siting next to residential communities should be addressed and included in a more comprehensive and balanced approach to data centers in Minnesota. Thank you for your work on HF 3007, Representative Fischer, and we urge the legislature to move toward a balanced approach to looking at both the upsides and downsides of data center development in Minnesota this session. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Clems. And finally, Katie Smith, please identify yourself for the record and proceed.
Madam Chair, members, Katie Smith, Director of the Ecological and Water Resources Division at Minnesota DNR. I want to first focus on Section 1. Water is not distributed equally across Minnesota. A project proposer may unknowingly choose a location with water availability or sustainability concerns. These concerns need to be considered early in the process of any water use project, especially before the design is complete, the site is selected, and land is acquired. The DNR is sometimes not aware of a potential water-intensive project until a permit application or amendment is submitted. Typically, this is problematic time for all involved to learn there may be significant water supply challenges because adjustments to project design or challenges with project viability can be expensive and often impact project timelines. The DNR's experience has been that early coordination to discuss water availability in a proposed project location is helpful to avoid these situations and ensure project proposers are aware of any concerns or information needs. We believe the proposed language adds value for companies, communities, and the DNR. Next, I want to move to Section 4 in the amendment regarding Water Availability Atlas. The DNR has identified potential limitations of such an atlas. It would not be able to predict water availability at the scale of an individual site. We also want to urge caution that any sort of map that characterizes availability of water should not be used to cite wells. Maps of this sort are general in nature and do not imply that an aquifer capable of producing water exists in an exact location. County-scale geologic and groundwater atlases are still being completed for large portions of the state, and atlases for some counties are also actively being updated. After that work is completed, periodic updates to the statewide atlas would be needed to reflect new information and understanding. The atlas could be overly broad, especially in areas that do not have a completed hydrologic atlas, potentially leading to misinterpretation. The U.S. Geological Survey has already completed water availability studies and represented the information at a large watershed scale in some parts of the state. More work is needed to determine how those existing studies could be tapped to create a statewide atlas. The siting methodology would need to consider how much water is needed, timing and rate of use, potential impacts on nearby groundwater-dependent resources and wells, water quality requirements, how the water would be used relative to Minnesota's water use priorities, potential for cumulative impacts from other near high-capacity users, if there is any anticipated discharge, and the properties of the discharge. We'd be glad to work with the author on this language. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to testify for or against this bill? Seeing none, then I will close our public testimony and move on to questions from members. Co-Chair Heinzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was glancing through the letters, some from cities and counties, and there was some concern that was raised about the broad language as they describe it in line 1.22, I think. Maybe that could be addressed if Chair Fischer could take a look at that.
Chair Heinzman, on the underlying bill, line 1.22. Section 1, subdivision 5, section 3?
I'm guessing that they were referring to the underlying bill.
Okay.
Maybe the bill author could refer to some of those letters if they had previously risen to the level that they might have been read. But there was a discussion in those letters about the broad language in general, and maybe that can be addressed.
Great. Representative Fischer.
So you're talking lines 1.21 to 1.22. So And this might be just, to me, it seems clear that if there, and it might be, getting some pushback a little bit more to understand specific scenarios. But what this is saying to me is that if there's a project that's coming in that is likely to have large water uses, and I would welcome somebody from the counties or the cities to come up to help me better understand where they're coming from on it, is that even if there's not going to be a decision, is what they're doing is if there's going to be a request that's going to involve large amounts of water that are stated here, that they at least give the heads up to the DNR early in the process, and understanding that sometimes you may have projects that don't go all the way through. The problem is that was mentioned before from the DNR and others, is sometimes you get projects underway and they find out too late in the process, oh, those water volumes aren't available. What we're trying to do is get this whole part of the process to happen earlier. And if there's some things, and I would welcome somebody up to help clarify, I would appreciate it.
Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record, and if you can address the issue at hand. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Craig Johnson. I'm with the League of Minnesota Cities. We did submit a letter for your packet, and it refers to what would be on the underlying bill, lines 1.21 through 2.2. So it would be subpoint C of the new language created under subdivision 5 of 103G.265. It is the requirement that says any city or county employee must report to the DNR within 10 days, and then lists what that is. This applies to every city and county employee, and it does not have a measure of what counts as likely to meet this threshold. If a stormwater person, as I noted in my letter, was at a conference and a vendor booth talked to them about data centers being something that's coming up, do they have to report that now to DNR because a vendor at a conference they went to reported it? If someone calls the city clerk and asks a question about where to site data centers, do they now have to try and get that person's contact information and report it to DNR or be in violation of the law? And how do we train every city employee to know how to measure whether a proposal would meet these criteria or not to be likely to trigger the portions of this law? So our recommendation in the letter was that the proposer should be the one responsible for contacting DNR, not random city staff deciding they think they heard something that might trigger this. It just is too vague, Madam Chair. Thank you, and we are happy to work with the author as this goes forward to try and address that concern. Thank you. Other questions or comments from the committee? Representative Heitzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to follow up, I guess, with a comment, and thank you for the testimony and the letter that was submitted. It does sound, Chair Fischer, like there is more that needs to be done on this if it were to move forward, which that may be a question mark. But there does appear to be some overreach here that needs to be addressed. I'm glad that we had the opportunity to bring that up and talk further on that.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from members of the committee? If not, Chair Fischer, to your closing.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you for the input. Thank you, Chair Heitzman, for raising the one issue a little bit clearer. I'm happy to work with people to get a little bit more clarification and address some of those kind of issues. This is something that I've had some very good input from the DNR. We've got a little bit more work that will continue to happen on these, and I know parts of these also include financial provisions that'll be taken a look at. So looking forward to the continued discussion. Thank you for the time, and with that, I renew my motion that House File 3007 as amended be laid over for possible inclusion in a future bill.
Thank you. Chair Fischer renews his motion for House File 3007 as amended to be laid over, and the bill is laid over. Co-Chair Fischer, do you have any announcements before we adjourn the committee?
No additional announcements that I have at this point in time. I know that Chair Heitzman are connecting and trying to figure out how we're going to take care of getting a bill put together for next week. I was wondering if Chair Heitzman has anything that they would like to add at this point.
Co-Chair Heitzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Chair Fischer. I would just say I hope that there does seem to be some interest, and that's taken advantage of. There does also appear to be, there's a question over elements of what the bill will contain, and hopefully we can work through those things. Obviously, that can always be difficult at times, so we will see.
Thank you to co-chairs. Thank you to presenters and committee members. We are adjourned.